Chapter 41. Pushing the Knife. When Chinmu sprinted wildly, he had raised a gust of wind. Granny C and Blind had sat on the cusp of that very gust to travel. Cusp of the gust was similar to the cusp of the waves. Wave is created by the motion of water, and the wave of wind that was raised by Chinmu was the cusp of the gust. The young man on Chinmu's back immediately got down and brought the three people towards his house as he hurried. Quickly, quickly. Chinmu put aside the cusp of the gust in his mind and walked to the courtyard of this manor to have a look. This village was much bigger than disabled elderly village, housing over 100 families. The houses here were also simple and crude. There was a huge tree in the courtyard which crown covered half of the house. The woman in childbirth was in the house under the tree crown. A village woman stuck her head out of the room and shouted, "Her water has broke. Quickly bring some hot water." Oh, this is great. The midwife from disabled elderly village is here. Now both the mother and child would definitely be safe. Granny C looked around and immediately understood what was happening. Moore, awaken your eyes to look around for any oddity. If there's something odd, you can settle it yourself. I'll be going in to deliver the baby. Blind, be careful not to get schemed against as well. Heaven's eyes, awaken. Chinmu opened his heaven's eyes and took a look at the surroundings. Suddenly his gaze landed on the dense tree crown and his blood ran cold while he almost let out a cry. There was a very thick branch on the tree, but when he took a closer look at it, it was actually a huge snake as thick as a barrel. The huge snake was hidden in the tree crown with half of its body hidden inside the tree trunk. There were huge knots protruding out from the tree occasionally, which was the body of the snake that was left out in the open. Only from the size of the snake body, Chinmu guessed that it was a long snake he had never seen before. The other half of its body was probably buried in the soil with the roots of the tree. This snake was bigger than the green dragon snake that Old Ma and the rest had caught. The entire tree, including the tree crown, was emanating thick black gases that were surrounding this house. At this moment, the huge snake was spitting out its scarlet red tongue as it lowered its head towards the room where the woman was in. Chinmu didn't know what it was about to do. Chinmu was afraid he had made a mistake and closed his heaven's eyes to see with his naked eyes. The tree was still a tree and not a huge snake. However, when he awakened his heaven's eyes once again, the huge snake was still coiled around in the tree crown and waiting to eat the soul of the baby that was about to come out. It was apparent that the huge snake had eaten the souls of the babies that this woman had given birth to during the past few years. Fury ignited in his heart, and he asked solemnly, "Grandpa Blind?" Blind, who was around him, replied him leisurely, "Granny had told us to leave it to you. Therefore do what you have to do. This will be your first hunting. Hurry up, the baby is about to come out." Chinmu composed himself and walked to the bottom of the tree as he gently breathed in and out. His vital chi moved from a standstill, and with the fury in his heart, his vital chi became boundless as it circulated faster and faster. As the vital chi in his body surged forth, his fury blazed even furiously. Shink. Suddenly, the pig's slaughtering knife resonated with the vital chi in his body and flew out from his back to the top of his head with a hum. Raising his hands to grab the knife, his rampaging vital chi surged wildly into the pig, slaughtering knife as he gave a swing. Swinging his knife with all his strength, unleashing all his vital chi and fury in that unrestrained slash. Slash. The pig's slaughtering knife in his hand whistled as it tore apart the air and landed a devastating cut of the trunk of the huge tree. Clank. A huge sound rang out as Chinmu slashed his knife into the tree trunk and embedded it halfway into the snake body that was hidden in the tree. The snake's skin and flesh had been cultivated extremely sturdy that even pig slaughtering knife, a weapon that Mute had made which surpassed normal spirit weapons, was unable to cut the huge snake into two halves. Placing his hand on the back of his knife, he executed Cripple's leg skills. Cripple once said that legs are the wind, the earth, the root of all strength. Planting his legs into the earth, he exerted his strength and the ground around his legs sank downwards. With all his momentum, he pushed onto the back of his knife with his hand while his other hand grabbed tightly onto the knife's handle as he pushed the knife. A scraping sound rang out. The huge snake got severed in half along with the tree. Chinmu stabilized his footing and brandished the pig, slaughtering in front of him. The blood on his knife continued dripping, and his muscles tensed up on his back while twitching uncontrollably. Behind, the towering tree slanted and collapsed. Crash! The huge tree collapsed in the courtyard and raised clouds of dust. Suddenly, the huge tree that had collapsed came to life. The huge snake, which was sliced apart into two, was actually still alive. The upper half of the snake body thrashed around and shattered the tree trunk where its body was hidden in, shooting the barks in all directions. Some of the barks were even lodged into the wall. The splattering barks and pieces of woods were even scarier than spears as they shot through the air with a huge force. Midnight battle across stormy cities. The pig slaughtering knife in Qin Mu's hand flashed as he swung it. His previous move had been extremely heavy as he gathered all his strength into his knife, whereas now his knife skills had become unusually fast. There was only one secret to Butcher's knife skill, and that was fast, faster, fastest. Clank, 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 clank. The violent blows rained down as numerous barks and woods collided onto Qin Mu's pig slaughtering knife, making his arm sore from blocking. The snake's ability was higher than him, however, it was focused on the woman giving childbirth as it wanted to instantly suck the soul away from the baby once it had come out. When babies were born, their umbilical cords were connected to their mother's placentas, thus their pneumas were pre-celestial, and once they were born, their pneumas would become post-celestial. When they were still in the womb, their pneumas weren't complete, so the huge snake chose to snatch the soul the instant the baby was born. It wasn't known how it had sneaked its way into the village and hid from everyone in the village while cultivating here. It had been hiding in this tree for the last several years without being discovered and had eaten a few infant souls to boost its own cultivation. It had thought everything would go smoothly like the previous few times and didn't notice Qin Mu, allowing him to sever it in half. However, despite being severed in half, it wasn't that easy for it to just die. The huge snake erupted in a fury, knowing that its body had severed and would be hard to stay alive for long. Thus it immediately reacted by opening its wide jaws and bit towards Qin Mu. Violent gusts blew furiously into Qin Mu's face, making his face twitch tremendously and his eyes unable to open. Without thinking, the knife in Qin Mu's hand slashed forward like a raging storm. However, an unimaginable powerful strength came towards him and knocked him back with a grunt. With a loud crash, there was a large human-shaped hole created in the wall of the courtyard. Before Qin Mu could get up, he saw the two gates of the courtyard being blown away like paper cards. The huge snake had crashed through the gate and slithered straight for him as it gave off a bloodthirsty aura. Its ferocious mouth and long teeth terrified Qin Mu, and he dared not face off with the huge snake as he sneaked a pleading glance at Blind. In the distance behind the snake, Blind just stood there calmly and paid no attention to what was happening. Qin Mu's heart stirred. Could it be Grandpa Blind think that I'm able to handle this snake? Since he thinks that I'm able to handle it, I will be able to do it. Heaven's eyes awaken. His vital chi circulated vigorously and entered his eyes to form layers of magnificent vital chi formations, forming a complicated pupil marking in his eyes. When he had awakened his Heaven's eyes, he immediately felt that the world in front of him had been restructured. The dim village, the stray houses, the snake pouncing at him, had all become several times clearer. Every action the snake made, he could easily catch them. Changing his footsteps, Qin Mu evaded the huge snake pounce by barely an inch and sliced his pig slaughtering knife on the eyes of the huge snake that had flown past him. Leaping upwards, he once again dodged the sweep of the huge snake by barely an inch. Every movement of the snake became extremely clear in his eyes. From the muscles' contractions under the snake's skin and the angle of the exertion of strength, he could clearly know the next movement of the snake and dodge it accordingly. All of this happened as if it was natural for Qin Mu. There was no need for him to predict its movement. Heaven's Eyes, the first heaven of 9 Heaven's Eye awakening skill, could not only see through facade, but could also raise his senses by leaps and bounds. With its left eye sliced open by Qin Mu's knife, the snake screeched in pain and immediately pounced towards Qin Mu, who had just landed on the ground. Following which, everything also suddenly turned dark before the other eye of the snake as it got sliced apart by Qin Mu. The huge snake suddenly quietened down and stopped moving. Chinmu also stood still without making a sound. The human and snake were just a few yards away from each other. At the sides of the village's pavements, several villagers had come out to have a look, only to be stunned at the sight of an 11 to 12 years old boy fighting against a huge snake. Night had already fallen in the small village, and the light from the old lamps shone dimly out from the windows, barely lighting up the pavements. Almost everyone had held their breaths and were afraid to make even the slightest sound. Everyone except the little girl, who had suddenly cried out from being scared. The huge snake instantly moved and slithered toward the little girl. With its huge mouth wide opened, it pounced towards the family of 3 that had been scared frozen. Chapter 42. Phantom of the Night. The instant where the huge snake moved, Chinmu leaped forward as well. With his pig slaughtering knife like the storm, he frantically cut down on the frail spot between the snake's head and the snake's body. Pig slaughtering knife skill, sun on East Sea thousand layer waves. This move of Butcher had to have the grandeur of a huge sun rising along with the 1,000 layers of waves overlapping each other. Using the matchless knife power to cut down and shatter every power in its way, there was only one thought in Chinmu's mind. Chop, 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 chop. I must behead it. Kai. The blood of the snake splattered out. The triangular head of the snake, which was as wide as a table, was separated from its body, but continued to fly towards the family of 3 with no idea that it was already dead. Looking at the head of the huge snake that was about to reach the family of 3, Chinmu leaped above the head of the snake and forcefully kicked downwards, closing the snake's mouth. The youth dropped straight down along with the snake's head and crashed in front of the family of 3 that had been scared shitless. The 3 of them stared blankly at the youth in front of them. Chinmu bent down and gave the little girl a smile, revealing his white teeth. Everything's fine now, little girl. Suddenly, the cries of a baby resonated out, and a woman rushed out from the house that had been partially destroyed by the huge snake while smiling, "Congratulations! Both the mother and child are safe." Chinmu immediately returned the pig, slaughtering knife back into the cowskin sheath, and ran back into the courtyard. The young man had already rushed excitedly into the house while Granny C came out to wash her hands and took a glance back at the loving family behind her. "Are you satisfied, Moor?" Granny C smiled. Chinmu looked at the sight of the loving family of 3 and nodded his head gently. His hand subconsciously rose up to hold onto the jade pendant on his chest. Granny C looked at his hand and gave a sigh in her heart. Blind stepped forward and gave a yawn. "The matter here is settled, so it's time for us to sleep." "Granny, they don't have much room here, so how about we squeeze?" Granny turned her head back with a scary gaze. Blind shivered uncontrollably and jabbed his bamboo cane into the ground, turning away. Nowadays, even the blinds also have to get fiercely stared at. People today have sadly degenerated. "I shall sleep on the street." "Granny, how come no one in the village had noticed this huge snake all this time?" Chinmu asked puzzledly as he saw the villagers dragging the snake's tail out from the tree trunk. He had lived in disabled elderly village since young, and all the villagers were disabled. Even Granny C was a hunchback. However, the elders in the village to him were all capable of anything. The villagers in this village were mostly ordinary humans. Even though there were practitioners, their cultivation and strengths weren't very high, thus he had some doubts. In Great Ruins, there's only one disabled elderly village. Granny C had a peaceful gaze. Most of the people here are ordinary humans who were too late to escape the Great Ruins catastrophe. There are also some people who were unable to continue living in the outside world and forced to escape here to hide from the pressure of exorbitant taxations of the landlords, seeking to survive here. The outside world? Chinmu's eyes sparkled. The outside world is much more dangerous than Great Ruins. Granny C gave a cold humph. Otherwise, Granny and the rest wouldn't be forced to hide here in the Great Ruins. Don't always think about going to the outside world. Chinmu scratched his head, having no idea why Granny C, who was always affable, had suddenly blown her temper. Granny C lowered her voice and whispered, "There's something strange going on with this snake." Strange beasts are normally unable to enter villages, yet this huge snake could hide in the manor and for several years even. I'm afraid this huge snake could only be purposely let in by someone. This kind of breeding method seems to be a method of the devil cult. Hehe, something interesting might just happen tonight. The snake was purposely let into the village to harm the villagers. Qin Mu's heart turned cold. How vile could the person be? The snake had obviously eaten the souls of a few newborn babies. What good is it to him to feed infants to a snake? Moore, something weird might happen to you tonight, but don't you move or make a sound even when you see it. In the morning, the outcome would be revealed. Granny C chuckled, revealing the bits and pieces of teeth left in her mouth. He used the snake to suck the infant's pneuma and souls before sucking the essence from the snake to reverse his pre-celestial pneuma. He should have been cultivating for many years and should have an extraordinary ability. This method of cultivation would definitely cause him to be chased down by people against devils outside, thus he could only stir up havoc here in Great Ruins. You can't deal with the person coming tonight, Moore. Just look. Qin Mu nodded his head as uneasiness welled up inside of him. This family was pretty excited for quite a long time, laughing and crying before they remembered to arrange a place for Granny C and Qin Mu to settle down. The couple gave out their central and inner room for Granny C and Qin Mu to rest. Qin Mu felt it was inappropriate, but Granny C didn't reject and made Qin Mu sleep in the central room while she slept in the inner room. Not long later, both of them fell asleep. Qin Mu had originally tried to keep himself awake, but as time went by, his eyelids drooped and gradually closed. In the middle of the night, when all was quiet and still, Qin Mu suddenly shivered uncontrollably and immediately opened his eyes only to find out he couldn't move. The door to the central room creaked open and dim light shone in through the door crack. A long shadow then appeared on the ground. Qin Mu opened his mouth, yet he wasn't able to make any sound to warn Granny C. The shadow on the ground flickered and started to move, climbing onto the wall. The shadow on the wall distorted and revealed sharp teeth and claws, making it seem even more menacing. Cold sweats broke out on Qin Mu's forehead, and the shadow climbed its way to the ceiling before hanging straight down to stare at him. Qin Mu stared back with his eyes wide open. It was a real shadow that was hanging down at him. It was flat yet incredibly flexible, as if it were a practitioner skilled in contortion. However, it was clearly just a shadow. How was the shadow able to move freely? Where could the owner of the shadow be? Whoosh! A gust of wind blew in from the door crack and brought a small triangular white banner along with it, which was caught in the hands of the shadow as it waved it towards Qin Mu. At this moment, the door of the room which Granny C was sleeping in suddenly creaked open and a silver bead flew out. It was like the silver pellets that Qin Mu had seen in Granny C's room. The bead stopped at the heart of Qin Mu's brow and remained spinning on the spot without letting out a sound. Hair-like swords that almost couldn't be seen continuously flew out from the silver bead. The black shadow on the ceiling waved the white banner around as it floated around in the room. The white banner was as fast as lightning as it repeatedly attacked Qin Mu, who was laying on the bed. At this moment, the bead moved too and clashed silently with the white banner, blocking all its attacks. No matter how much the two strange objects clashed together, no sounds were emitted and no items were destroyed throughout the eerily quiet showdown. After some time, the shadow trembled and spat out blood from its mouth. The white banner fluttered away while the black shadow flowed out of the house like water and vanished. The silver-colored bead stopped spinning and returned back into the room without a trace. Only now could Qin Mu feel that he was able to move once again as he gasped for his breath. He didn't understand what had just happened, but the bloodstains on the ground proved that everything he had witnessed had really happened. Outside the house, no sound could be heard except the beating of the gong. It was the night watchman announcing the period of the night to prevent the villagers from waking up early and getting swallowed by the darkness outside of the village. The night watchman beat the gong thrice and kept his gong to go home. When he reached the front of his house, he saw a blind man walking by with his bamboo cane. "Old brother, find a place to take a rest." The night watchman quickly stopped Blind and smiled. "It's already so late. Be careful not to walk out of the village and get eaten by the monsters." Blind gave a smile and tapped his bamboo cane. On the night watchman's shadow, "Thanks for the warning." After saying his thanks, Blind tapped his way forward with his bamboo cane and slowly walked away. Pop pop. 2 bloody holes exploded in the night watchman's chest as his body swayed and collapsed to the ground. What a fast spear to be able to break through my spell. Kiki, I know who you are. You may be blind now, but you are even stronger than before. The night watchman took his last breath and died. From above, a triangular white banner floated down and covered his face. Chapter 43. The Demon Rushing Home. The next day, Qinmu was awakened by the commotion made by the villagers and went to ask around. Only then did he know that the night watchman had died last night, scaring the villagers. They had already been frightened once by the huge snake that had come out from the tree Qinmu had chopped. Never did they expect the night watchman to die such a gruesome death in the dead of night, causing them to panic. The couple from yesterday brought a plate which had a red cloth laid on it. On the top of the red cloth were some gifts. Midwife, little brother, we are a poor family and have nothing much to offer. You must accept this. Qinmu was about to reject when Blind cut in. Accept them, Moor. Don't keep them feeling that they owe you. Qinmu properly kept the few items and bid goodbye to the couple. The man smiled. With such exceptional ability, little brother would definitely become a dragon or phoenix in the world. What's so great about dragon and phoenix? Granny C said. Dragon's liver and phoenix's gall are merely delicacies on the table. Don't become a dragon or phoenix. Become one who will devour a dragon or phoenix in this world. The couple looked at each other speechlessly. Granny C waved towards them. Go back. Moor, Blind, we'll continue with the temple fair. Qinmu quickly caught up to the Granny C and asked curiously, Granny, what was going on last night? Was the method of breeding from the night watchman? How did he die? Also, what was the silver pellet floating above my forehead last night? Didn't you also say everyone was ordinary in our village? How come I feel the people in our village aren't as ordinary as people from other villages? Where did all the questions come from? Granny C's head started to ache and pleadingly looked towards Blind. Blind chuckled as he walked forward, knocking into a tree with a bump and fainted. Granny C gave a few steps on Blind's face, yet he remained unconscious. Qinmu immediately carried Blind on his back and looked hopefully at Granny C. Granny C then took out a needle from her basket and stabbed it into Blind's butt. Even with the blood spurting out, he still remained unconscious. Left without a choice, Granny C blinked her eyes and said, the night watchman was indeed the expert from the devil path that had bred the snake. His ability wasn't weak as well. He used the phantom illusion technique, which is one of the very powerful divine arts of Heavenly Devil Cult. I used shadow assassination skill to injure his shadow and used his shadow to injure his true body. However, being haunted by the devil in my heart, I had once promised someone to never harm a Heavenly Devil Cult's disciple, so I could only force him to retreat. The one who killed him wasn't me and was Blind. Qinmu blinked his eyes and asked again, then what was the silver pellet? Was it a sword pellet? Is Granny skilled in sword technique? Granny C also blinked her eyes back at Qinmu. Both of them blinked and blinked at each other until their eyes were sore. Gritting her teeth, Granny C stabbed another needle into Blind's, but he still remained unconscious. Silver pellet? Ahem, did you mean this? Granny C flipped over her palm and there it was, a silver pellet. Qinmu immediately nodded his head. Teach me sword technique, Granny. Granny C gave a sigh. It's not that I don't want to teach you. I can't. My sword technique may be one of the greatest, but it would never be considered the best in the world. If you learn my sword technique, the person would be unwilling to teach you, therefore I wouldn't teach you even if it costs me my life. Qinmu became disappointed, but his spirit immediately lifted again. The best sword technique in the world? Is he from our village? Stop guessing blindly. Granny C warned him, if you go beg him, more so he won't teach you. Only when he had come to terms with himself would he teach you. There are many ultimate arts that you had learned, and you haven't truly mastered any of them. When the day comes you can beat the elders in the village, you shall then think about training your sword technique. Even if he doesn't teach you then, we'll force him to teach. Blind gave a yawn and said calmly, he's the most knowledgeable and has the densest cultivation. He's gotten more and more terrifying these few years, and we might not even beat him together. You're finally willing to wake up? Granny C erupted in anger and stabbed another needle on his butt. Blind climbed down from Qinmu's back and propped himself up with his bamboo cane. Some things are better explained by you than me. I can explain how I killed the night watchman though. The phantom illusion technique of the night watchman was very powerful to be able to swap himself between his true body and his shadow. His shadow was his true body instead of his body. If one was to only attack his body in a fight, they would be killed by his shadow. When he wanted to kill me, I used my bamboo cane and jab his shadow twice on the ground to kill him. Qinmu thought for a while, then continued, "Then what about him rearing a snake to absorb infants' pre-celestial pneuma and soul for cultivation?" Blind replied, "Granny, you'll explain since you're better versed in the devil techniques. This technique is called the pre-celestial freedom technique." Granny C explained. This technique is used by heavenly devil cult to achieve pre-celestial from post-celestial. However, it's not known where he had obtained an incomplete technique and to actually use unborn babies for cultivation. The true pre-celestial freedom technique may be a devil technique, but it's upright and would never stoop so low to use this kind of despicable method for cultivation. Instead, they would absorb the energy of heaven and earth, the essence of sun and moon to cultivate. A worried expression appeared on her face as she muttered to herself, "For a person of the heavenly devil cult to be near, it seems there won't be peace in the great ruins anymore." These fellows tend to appear in a hive. The three people returned back to Grandma Temple and continued with the temple fair. When late afternoon came, people from various villages started to leave to return back to their village, and Qinmu once again drove the cow cart back to disabled elderly village. "Moor, you can now go hunting on your own," Old Ma suddenly declared as he sat on the cow cart, his body moving up and down with the irregular road. "You've grown up." Qinmu felt warmth in his heart and smiled as he turned back. The cowherd boy of disabled elderly village had a smile as radiant as the morning sun. "However, you are only to hunt strange beast and not challenge the territorial strange beast," Granny C warned. "And you're to herd the cows every evening and made them eat more grass." The cowherd boy's face immediately turned black, and the two sturdy cows which were pulling the cart silently mooed in anger. Tears welled up in their eyes, making them seem exceptionally wronged. Seeing what happened, Qinmu asked suspiciously, "Granny, are these two cows human as well? Try guessing." Granny C chuckled. Qinmu didn't want to guess. Suddenly a gust of wind blew from behind, and the youth who was enjoying the breeze suddenly took a step forward and leaped off from the cow cart to chase the wind. He wanted to catch up to the wind and to travel in the sky while stepping on the cusp of gust. His speed was extremely fast as he leaped up the forest and sprinted to the top of the trees. His speed increased even faster and finally caught up to the tip of the wind. Leaping into the sky, even though he was in midair, there was a strange force beneath his feet pushing him upwards. The youth cheered in excitement as his feet stepped continuously on the cusp of gust to travel in the sky. The few people on the cow cart looked up, and Blind calmly asked, "Will he drop down?" Apothecary grabbed a handful of wind and took a sniff before laughing. "He will drop down. This is a demonic wind created by a demon rushing home. When the demon discovers him, it would definitely stop. Who will be the one to catch him?" Qinmu's footstep grew faster along with the wind and ended up sprinting several miles without him noticing. Just as he was being excited, he suddenly saw a pure snow white fox sitting on a huge banana leaf with its front paws straightened out and its back paws in a sitting position. As he stared blankly at the white fox, it also stared back blankly. The human and fox screamed in unison, and Qinmu immediately felt the whistling wind came to a rest, causing him to wave his limbs helplessly as he fell from the sky. Meanwhile, the fox was still sitting on the banana leaf while pointing its front paw at him, screaming from being startled. "Crap!" Qinmu's feet immediately changed as he tried to execute heaven-pilfering leg skill. "As long as I run fast enough, I can even run in the sky." However, only now did he realize that he wasn't fast enough. He simply couldn't step on the air and continued to fall towards the ground. Qinmu looked down and his scalp turned numb. Below was a mountainous region, and there wasn't even a tree in sight. There were only numerous scattered rocks, and if he landed on any one of them, he would probably die horribly. At this moment, the screaming white fox in the sky came back to its sense and flew down in an instant on its banana leaf. Qinmu immediately felt wind growing beneath his feet, and he could once again step on the cusp of the gust. His feet moved quickly to stop the momentum of his fall, and just before he landed on the ground, he managed to leap up using the cusp of gust and travel on the wind. Letting out a sigh of relief, he saw the fox catching up to him while sitting on the banana leaf. Looking at each other, the fox suddenly spoke with a sweet voice in human language. However, its body reeked of alcohol as it asked curiously in a drunk manner, "What are you doing? Why did you come into my wind?" Qinmu was astonished and replied, "I was trying to see if I could catch up to the cusp of gust in order to travel on the wind." "I didn't know this was your wind. You can fly? And also talk as well?" "I use spells to harness the wind so I can manipulate the wind to travel," the white fox explained. "I had just returned from a banquet and am rushing back home as the sky is almost dark. I'll be heading off now and won't be sending you off. If fate allows it, we'll meet each other again." Once it finished saying its words, it vanished with the gale. Qinmu felt the energy of the wind becoming weaker and immediately sprinted down from the sky. When he had landed, disabled elderly village was just a short distance in front of him. Lifting his head up, the fox had already vanished without a trace. Returning from a banquet? Qinmu was full of questions. How interesting. This talking fox knows spells and also attends banquets. When I meet it next time, I definitely need to ask it clearly. 2 days later, an old and a young monk covered in dust came by Zhang Manor. As they walked into the village, the elder asked, "Is there any kind person willing to provide us a bowl of water? We monks are always outside and have a bad stomach, so we would like a bowl of warm water." The villagers poured 2 bowls of water for the elder and youth, who thanked them for their kindness. With a pleasant-looking face, the elder smiled. "We, master and disciple, had been wandering everywhere and know some spells. I can feel a demonic aura in your village. Is there a need for us to help you get rid of the demon?" The villager smiled. "The demon has already been gotten rid of. It was a huge snake hidden in the trunk of a tree. It was killed by a youth from a neighboring village." The elder asked in astonishment, "Why do I still feel a demonic aura here? Did someone pass away in the village recently?" Chapter 44. Heavenly Devil Patriarch. The villagers of Zhang Manor crowded around, and one of them immediately said, "The night watchman had just died." The elder pondered for a minute and asked, "Was the night watchman's body buried? He is most likely a demon, and his body may turn into a zombie." The villagers in Zhang Manor jumped in shock and immediately brought the 2 people to the grave of the night watchman. "We just buried him yesterday, 2 venerables." The elder pointed his finger forward, and the dirt on the grave separated to 2 sides. A thin coffin rose up from the pit and floated in front of everyone. Pop, pop, pop. The coffin nails automatically popped out one by one, and the cover of the coffin was lifted up. As the coffin fell back into the pit, the body of the night watchman continued floating in midair, his face getting covered by a white banner. Retrieving the white banner for inspection, the old and the young monk took a look at each other and nodded their heads silently. The elder chanted an incantation and pointed his finger at the body once again, causing the night watchman body to instantly burst into flames, turning into ashes before long. The villagers immediately gave their thanks, offering gold and silver as a reward. The youth immediately shook his hand, but the elder said, "We don't deserve the reward for doing nothing. But if we did a meritorious deed, we'll have to receive the reward. Accept it." The youth then kept the reward. The elder then asked, "Where does the youth that killed the huge snake stay? Who were the ones around him?" "They're from disabled elderly village. With him are Blind and Granny C. Following the river upstream, you can find the village about 14 miles from here." The elder said his thanks, and they left Zhang Manor to travel upstream. After walking a few miles, the elder gave a sigh. Death is like an extinguished lamp. Hall Master Mo's lamp has been extinguished. That night watchman was our Hall Master Mo. He had gone down the wrong path while cultivating freedom pre-celestial technique and used infants for cultivation. Even though he deserved death, he was still a Hall Master of our sacred cult. The one who killed him seemed to be Spear God, who had nailed his soul and body to death. On the white banner are sword marks, which meant before Hall Master Amo met Spear God, he had met her as well, the cult mistress. The youth listened silently. The elder continued, Cult Mistress was always mysterious and elusive. After hiding away in the great ruins, experts from our sacred cult had been tracking her down to no avail. Never would I expect Hall Master Amo to meet her here. Patriarch, we have not wasted our time here. The youth opened his mouth and an extremely old but powerful voice sounded out. After Cult Mistress had killed Cult Master and stolen great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures, the Holy Bible of our cult, she disappeared for 40 years. Piteous that we had to search around for her for the past 40 years. We have finally found her. The next morning in disabled elderly village, Apothecary brought village chief to the village's entrance after breakfast and brewed up a pot of tea before he heard the clucks of the hen dragon in the village. The hen has laid its egg, Moore. Go grab the egg from the coop. Granny C hurried Moore to go grab the egg, and just as Chinmu entered the coop, he got chased out by the hen dragon after getting his face pecked bloody. The hen dragon was extremely fierce and could spit out a fire snake that was several yards long. Its feathers were as sharp as blades, and its claws could knead metal like mud. Sparring a few rounds with the hen, Chinmu realized he wasn't its opponent and ran away. Moore, you don't even have the strength to subdue a hen? Butcher saw Chinmu getting chased around the entire village by the hen dragon and roared with laughter. Granny C took the chance to snatch the egg, and when the hen dragon couldn't catch up to Chinmu, it went back into its coop arrogantly only to find out its egg was gone. Flying into a rage, it went after the youth again to beat him up. After the commotion, Chinmu raised his spirit and swept away all depression gained from being defeated by the hen dragon. Strapping the pig slaughtering knife on his back, he then put on his sword sheath, a huge iron hammer, his kakara staff, and stuffed a few vitality reinforcement pill in his pockets before leaving the village enthusiastically. This was his first time going out to hunt alone, and Chinmu had been waiting forever for this day. However, he was a little depressed after being beaten by the hen dragon. Walking out of the village, he saw a youth and an elder walking towards the village like two wandering devotees. The youth and the elder came to the village's gate, paying their respects to village chief and apothecary who were drinking tea there, asking, "May we request for a cup of tea?" Village chief raised his eyebrows and replied, "How can we neglect our visitors from afar?" Apothecary poured 2 cups of tea for the youth and the elder as they both sat down. The youth sat in front of village chief while the elder sat at the side. This was the youth that had slaughtered the snake? The elder looked pleasantly at Chinmu and smiled. Chinmu was about to say something when village chief cut in, "Moore, it's none of your business being here. Go do your own stuff." Chinmu nodded and walked towards the forest. When Chinmu had gone far away, the youth in front of village chief opened his mouth and spoke with an extremely old voice. "We have met before, am I right?" Village chief nodded his head. "Yes, we have." The youth revealed a smile. "There aren't many people left from our generation. I'm very glad to be able to meet you." "I could say the same," village chief said insipidly. The youth smiled. "I'm here to see Granny C. Our cult hasn't had a cult master for the past 40 years. Granny C will have to give us an answer." Village chief shook his head. "Once in the village, we have no ties with the outside world." The youth's gaze wavered. "I shall not go in then. Could you ask her out for me? I have questions to ask her." Village chief shook his head again. She had gone out. The elder couldn't restrain himself and was about to say something when the youth raised his hand to stop him. "We have already waited 40 years. There's no rush now. Elder of Discipline, since Cult Mistress isn't here, call the strong workers over to build a village. We're going to stay here for the night." The elder bowed in agreement, and a devilish chi shot up into the sky to form a giant decree word. The youth slowly enjoyed his tea, and after 2 hours, the villagers in disabled elderly village put down the work on hand and walked out of the village, raising their heads to have a look. From the forest, huge giants with bulging muscles walked through the forest, pushing down all the tree in their paths. Every 4 giants carried a stone statue with them, and there was a total of 4 statues. Walking over as they gasped for breath, the rocks and mountains were flattened like mud under their feet. The 16 giants' faces were flushed as the stone statues were obviously incomparably heavy. Even strong workers like they weren't able to handle them. The 16 giants carefully placed down the 4 statues on the north, south, east, and west corners right beside the disabled elderly village. Not long later, another ship with several decks sailed by and stopped beside the river. Over 100 carpenters came down from the ship and started cutting down the trees beside disabled elderly village and built the houses. An hour later, wooden houses were soon built, with all the pieces of furniture that were needed. The carpenters then went back to the ship and brought down all the gold, silver, household utensils, and cutleries. They then boarded the ship again and sailed away. Following that, another ship sailed in and some painters came down to paint the houses and the pieces of furniture, leaving after they were finished. Another ship of stonemasons arrived and started to extract stones from the mountain to carve into stone statues and stone slabs to make pavements in the village, leaving after they were finished as well. After some time, a burly man with a curly mustache hurried over while covered in dust and bowed. Patriarch, senior brother of discipline. The elder replied, Left Guardian, the village is ready. Find yourself a room. The burly man with curly mustache entered the newly built village beside disabled elderly village and settled down in one of the rooms, not making a sound. Sometime later, an old woman in shabby clothes came by and paid her respects to the youth and the elder before settling down in one of the rooms. Moments later, another fisherman came sailing down on a skiff made from a piece of leaf. Anchoring his skiff at the side of the river, he settled down in the village with his fishing basket and rod. Not long later, more and more strange people started to enter the village. Some of them were moneybags and some of them were merchants. Others looked like scholars, teachers, and even prostitutes. There were various people from all kinds of professions. Old Ma's expression turned grave and lowered his voice. There are 360 professions in Heavenly Devil Cult, which formed 360 halls and hall masters. They were all extremely mysterious and were hidden throughout the whole world. Who would have thought all 360 hall masters had entered the Great Ruins for the past 40 years to look for the cult mistress? I'm afraid they would all come stay here beside us. The smile on Cripple's face became even more radiant as he laughed. Where's Granny C? These people are all looking for her. Def replied, I saw Granny turning into a roe deer and left the village before Chinmu did. I think she worried about Moore hunting alone, therefore, she's escorting him secretly. I'm afraid she still has no idea that the Devil Cult had found their way here. The Devil Cult almost moved their entire cult over to our side. Chinmu walked deep into the forest and mountains, and after a while, a roe deer ran by while looking around, unable to find any trace of Chinmu. Just as the roe deer was bewildered, Chinmu jumped down from the tree and smiled. Granny, since I'm supposed to be hunting alone, do you mind going back? I'm able to take care of myself. The roe deer got angry and scolded, Rascal, be careful not to die outside. She then wagged her little tail and ran off. Chinmu continued to move forward and saw a woolly mammoth drinking water beside a pond not long after. Granny, I'm really able to take care of myself. There's no need for you to follow me. The woolly mammoth flew into a rage and started trampling toward him. Chinmu circulated his vital chi and drew his pig slaughter knife out with a murderous intent. Since you aren't Granny, then die. The woolly mammoth immediately turned around and ran away while scolding him in human language. You're going to even kill Granny. Get ready for a beating when you go back. Chinmu shook his head and walked another 2 miles forward before helplessly raising his head at a huge bird in the sky. Granny, there's really no need to follow me. The huge bird glanced at him and remained unmoved while continuously circling on top of him. Chinmu gazed wavered and picked up a bunch of stones, flicking them into the sky. The stones in the sky were of different height, allowing Chinmu to use them as stairs to leap upwards until he was beside the bird. The huge bird suddenly spoke. All right, I shan't follow you anymore. When she finished saying, she flapped her wings and flew away. Chinmu landed back on the ground with a thud as both his legs sunk deep into the mud. Lifting up his head, the bird in the sky had vanished without a trace. Granny would probably still follow me. Mu took notice of his surroundings and didn't discover anything abnormal, so he continued a few miles forward. In front of him was a waterfall with a good landscape. At the side of the waterfall was a straw hut, and outside the hut was a slanted stone statue that was half buried in the ground. Smoke could be seen rising from the straw hut, which showed that someone was living here. How are there still people living here in such wilderness? Could it be an elderly expert hiding in seclusion here? Just as he thought about this, he saw a white fox walking out from the straw hut to grab a bamboo tube before returning back to the hut. Chapter 45: Surging River Dragon Palace. Mu went forward and saw the white fox holding onto the bamboo tube, puffing its cheeks as it blew air into the stove. Mu gently coughed and said, "Is there anyone home?" The white fox in the grass hut jumped in shock and immediately hid the bamboo tube away while speaking in an old voice. "Who's the one making a fuss outside and disturbing my peace? I am an ancient demon and I shall turn you into ashes." Mu broke out in laughter, and the white fox immediately raised its head to look out the window. Seeing the youth outside, it let out a sigh of relief and its voice changed back to its normal sweet-sounding voice, so it was the youth who had borrowed my wind that day. I had been a little drunk from the banquet that day, so pardon my impoliteness. Don't just stand outside. Come on in. Mu walked into the straw hut and took a look around. He was astonished as the straw hut was pretty tidy. There were even a bed, rice vat, pieces of furniture, curtains, and even a dressing table. The white fox stood upright like a human and bobbed a curtsy to Mu. "This is my humble home. Please excuse the humility in my room." Mu returned the greeting and asked curiously, "You're making your meal?" The white fox replied, "Yesterday it was my sister's treat, therefore I had drunk a few cups more. Had a migraine when I woke up today, therefore I'm making some soup to sober up. Please take a seat, young master." Mu was secretly amazed. This white fox was much smarter than Devil Ape, to know how to even make soup for itself. It's just that this fox was a drunkard and would get drunk every day. Seeing a bookshelf at the side, he walked over to have a look. On the bookshelf were ancient books. He took down a book and it was about the skills on breathing exercises. There were also spells in the books, but they weren't complete. "Can young master read?" The white fox finished cooking its soup and took a glimpse at Mu, who was enthralled in the books. Pleasantly surprised, it asked, "I don't understand the writings on the books and can only look at the pictures to cultivate. If young master understands the writings on the books, can you read them out to me?" "Why can't I?" Mu sat down and the white fox wagged its tail. The wind floated the bowl of soup onto the table and the white fox sat in front of him. Its eyes were bright and full of expression. Mu flipped open the first page and read out, "Circulate the chi to your square-inch mountain. Stimulate your vital chi core. Move the tiger to the bottom of your heart. Vibrate the winter sea of chi." The white fox drank its soup and listened attentively when it suddenly asked, "Where's the square-inch mountain?" "The square-inch mountain is at the heart of your brows." Mu explained, "The heart of your brows is where your spirit embryo divine treasure is." To circulate your chi to your square-inch mountain meant to circulate your vital chi to your heart of your brows. However, when your vital chi reaches the heart of your brows, there will be a God voice from the 9 heavens above to cut off your vital chi. The white fox tried it out and shook its head. "I can't hear any God voice." Mu frowned. In the past, there will always be a God voice cutting him off when he directed his vital chi to the heart of his brows. He had thought that the white fox would encounter the same situation as him, but he didn't expect it to be not the case. Could it be that the structure of the spirit embryo divine treasure is different between a human and a fox? He didn't think further and continued to read and explain the ancient text to the white fox. Not long later, he had finished reading the entire book. On this ancient book, the method of cultivation had its unique ways of cultivating. However, it wasn't compatible with Mu's overlord body, therefore, he can't use it to cultivate. The white fox was intelligent and comprehended the content in the books. It smiled and said, "I had cultivated using the pictures in the past and thought I had learned the stuff recorded in the book. To think I had still made many mistakes in my cultivation. Thank you, young master, for clearing my doubts. My name is Hulinger. May I dare to ask your name?" My name is Qin Mu, a cowherd boy with the surname Qin, and I'm not any young master. Qin Mu smiled. I stay nearby and not far from here. Where did you get these ancient books? Hu Linger drank the soup and felt much better. About 20 miles west from here, there's a ruin. Once I was too late to return home, thus I hid from the darkness in the ruins. While I was there, I accidentally opened a stone chamber and found these few books inside. There was also a bottle of elixir, and after drinking it, I had suddenly become intelligent and had a mind of my own. I felt the books were good stuff, therefore, I've brought them back with me. However, since I was unable to read, I could only look at the pictures. I have learned all my spells from the book. 20 miles west? Qin Mu was astonished and pondered. Could it be Surging River Dragon King's Dragon Palace? Hu Linger's eyes lighted up and said, there are indeed many dragon sculptures there, however, it's very dangerous in there. There's something treacherous inside, and I dare not go in, so I just brought a few books back. Qin Mu immediately asked, could you bring me there? The little white fox replied, it's very treacherous inside and can't be ventured carelessly. When I just reached the door, I was scared. She became embarrassed and didn't continue, which probably meant that she had been scared shitless. Qin Mu became excited. Don't you want to take a look in the Dragon Palace? Maybe there's even a Dragon King inside. Don't want to. Hu Linger gave it some time as her eyes blinked slyly. If young master can come by here frequently to read these ancient books to me, I can bring you there. I'm not going to go in though. Deal. Qin Mu smiled and raised his palm. Hu Linger hesitated for a moment before raising her furry paw to strike with his palm. After that, she drank all her soup. The human and the fox left the straw hut and went west. The banquet that you attended that day, whose banquet was it? Qin Mu remembered what happened that day and asked. It was the banquet held by the Great Demon King, inviting all the greater demons from everywhere. After obtaining the ancient books from Surging River Dragon Palace, my wisdom had increased greatly and had become a well-known greater demon around here. However, I still can't beat those fellows with brute strength, thus I still rank at the last among the greater demons. Hu Linger jumped onto a banana leaf and executed her spell to raise up a demon wind. The demon wind blew up the banana leaf and she smiled. The Great Demon King had cultivated its human body and is very powerful. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, all the greater demons will have to listen to his command no matter if they are territorial strange beast or not. The demon wind blew the banana leaf, sending the white fox into the sky. Qin Mu leaped up and traveled west on the cusp of the gust. At this moment, a mile away from the straw hut was a huge toad-eyed beast looking around bewilderedly. Seeing the time, Moore should have reached already. Turning into a strange beast this time, he'll definitely not recognize me. This is weird. Where did that rascal go? There is a demon wind of a fox. The rascal got kidnapped by a vixen on his first hunting. On the river 30 miles from disabled elderly village, a gust of wind was blowing onto a 3 yards long banana leaf. On the leaf was a fox, and beside the fox was a youth running on the wind. They were Qin Mu and Hu Linger. With my magic power, I'm still unable to fly on my own. I can only use my spell to raise a demon wind and use it to make the banana leaf float in the sky. If I was to run on the wind like you, I would definitely drop down. The Dragon Palace is nearby. Hu Linger lowered her demon wind, allowing Qin Mu and the banana leaf to gradually reach the ground. After some time, the human and fox landed on the ground. Qin Mu looked around and saw the surging river wound around a huge mountain. The azure water revolved around the green mountain, and the melodious chirping of the birds resonated throughout the valleys. There were monkeys swinging from tree to tree, huge fishes and river beasts swimming in the water. Everything was peaceful and serene. The white fox leaped around as if it was flying, and Qin Mu quickly kept up. The direction in which Hu Linger was running was the mountain where the river was revolving around. Qin Mu couldn't help being puzzled. Could the Dragon Palace not be built in the river but on the mountain? After a while, they had reached the top of the mountain. Looking at the ruins there, it was a Dragon King temple. In front of the temple, there was a huge flood restraint stone that was 30 yards tall. It was like a stone tablet, and below it was a sculpture of a huge stone tortoise carrying the flood restraint stone. The stone tortoise had its mouth open as if it was extremely tired and need to catch its breath. The Dragon King temple was run down and had dilapidated walls. The king's palace had already collapsed as well. Looking around, there were no stone statues, therefore it was unable to withstand the darkness invasion. Just as he was puzzled, Hulinger had suddenly disappeared without a trace. Hulinger's voice suddenly sounded out, "Come in quickly." Qin looked towards the sound of the voice and saw the white fox in the mouth of the stone tortoise waving her paw at him. Qin immediately went over. The stone tortoise was very huge, huge enough for a person to stand upright in it. Qin followed the skipping white fox and reached a place where there was a set of stairs hidden in depth. There was originally a stone door in front of the stairs. Qin didn't know when had it collapsed, revealing the stairs that led downwards. Qin followed the white fox forward. As he moved deeper into the mountains, the stairs grew wider and wider. The mountain walls on the side were also clammy and overgrown with moss that was glowing. There were also strange creatures floating around like dandelion. They had little thin feelers growing below them, and as they waved them, they could actually fly in the air. The white fox jumped up to bite one of them before eating them down. She then kept hopping up and down to eat non-stop, making them look very delicious. Chapter 46. Dragon. Qin stretched out his hand to grab one and carefully took a bite. It had a spicy flavor which was spicier than Butcher's strong alcohols. In his stomach, there was a burning feeling, causing his vital qi to be abnormally active. Circulating his vital qi, he actually felt a medicinal energy similar to the vitality reinforcement pill which could raise his vital qi cultivation. However, it didn't have as much effect as vitality reinforcement pill. Is this creature plant or animal? Qin grabbed a few more and saw these creatures had no eyes, limbs, or orifice. They need to use their whisker-like tentacles to absorb nutrients from the moss, thus he can't determine whether they are plant or animal. He only ate one while Hulinger continued hopping around and eating to its content. Walking deeper down, the air became cooler. Not knowing how far they went, they could hear the trickling sound of water. There was a small and clear stream coming out the mountain wall. There were a few huge fish without any eyes living in the pool at the end of the stream. The few huge fish were also giving off a fluorescent glow. If they wanted to cross over, they would have to pass through the pool to get to the other side. These huge fish are very fierce. They will pounce towards any sound they hear, and they are very powerful. Hulinger whispered, "I shall throw the pebble over to distract the fish, and we shall take the chance to rush over." Once she had told Qin her plan, she grabbed a pebble with her paw and forcefully threw it far away. When the stone hit the wall, the few huge fish without eyes leaped out of the water and wiggled their tails in midair. Their 4 fins opened up like 4 wide wings and pounced towards the location of the sound. Now, Hulinger guided Qin and ran towards the other side of the pool. In the hurry, the youth heard a few crunching sounds and saw the weird fish colliding onto the wall and bit out a few huge holes in the wall with their ferocious mouths. The exceptionally hard mountain rocks were like tofu in their mouths. If they bit into a human, the aftermath would be too horrible to contemplate. As the human and fox ran to the other end of the pool, the few weird fish heard the sound of footsteps and flapped their fins to turn their direction, rushing towards them. "Follow me, young master." Hulinger rushed into the passage at the other end of the pool in an instant, and Qin followed. The passage wasn't wide, so the few huge fish couldn't fly and had to use their 4 fins as legs to run after Qin and the little fox in the passage. Are these still fish? Qin scalp turned numb and quickly followed behind Hulinger. The weird fish chased after them for a distance and returned back into the pool to hide after they couldn't catch up to them. Qin let out a sigh of relief. The path in front of them gradually became wider, and soon they had entered a trumpet-shaped cave. Suddenly, the sunlight on crystalline waves shone down on him, making him look upwards and be stunned. On top of his head, waves and waves of water flowed by. He could see schools of fishes swimming above him and even a huge golden turtle. They're a huge fish that was like a small boat and also large-sized river beast. A huge fish became excited when it saw Qin and the little fox, making it open its ferocious mouth to pounce on them. However, it collided into an invisible water wall and bounced backward. The huge fish shook its head in bewilderment and swam away. Surging river. This is the bottom of the surging river. Qin had a strange expression. The surging river is right on top of us, yet the water is not flooding this place up. Looking forward, his heart tremored. One by one, the dragon pillars appeared in front of him. Each of the dragon pillars was gigantic and dozens of yards tall. Standing tall under the river, the top of the dragon pillars was in contact of the river. The floor beneath their feet was paved out with white marbles. As the pavement extended out forward, there was a community of palaces just 300 yards ahead between the two rows of dragon pillars. The dragon pillars surrounded the community of palaces and withhold the river water from flooding in here. However, many palaces had already fallen. Some huge change must have happened here, causing this place to turn into ruins. Hu hopped around and stopped before the ruins of a palace. Qin saw a modeled wall painting on a wall that was half collapsed. It was a painting of a dragon head elder inviting his guests to a banquet. The dragon head elder's guests were all strange creatures. There was a tortoise-back old man, a snake-tail woman, monk, and also human. Crash. A pillar collapsed and nearly crushed Qin and the little fox. Hu came to a huge hall which was already half collapsed and said, "This was where I found the ancient books." Qin walked closer. In the dilapidated hall, Qin saw a hidden stone chamber built into the wall. The stone door had already collapsed. That was why the chamber was discovered by Hu. The stone chamber was already empty, as the items inside were probably shifted away by Hu. If you continue forwards, there would be great danger. Hu pointed at the towering doorway ahead and nervously said, "It's very scary." Qin looked at the doorway and he could faintly see a palace behind it. It was still pretty complete and hadn't collapsed yet. However, what's strange was there seemed to be a dense fog covering up what was inside. Thus Qin couldn't see clearly what's inside. He could only feel that the palace was floating in the fog while being faintly discernible. "There's a terrifying fellow inside." Hu's voice trembled and said, "Once you reach the door, you'll be able to feel his aura. Then you will turn wobbly and be unable to stand." Qin walked forward and Hu mustered its guts to follow behind him. When they reached the doorway, Qin could feel an extremely strong, baleful atmosphere hitting him in his face, causing him to shudder in fear. It was half the sky being covered in dark clouds on a sunny day right in front of him, and in the pitch-black clouds, there was an extremely huge beast staring at him. Divine, dignified, its power was not to be crossed. At the same time, it was a savage and sinister beast. This was the great danger Hu had talked about. Qin took a deep breath and stabilized himself. His spirit also returned back to normal. Heaven's eyes awakened. The vital chi formation crisscrossed in his eyes and created a layer of pupil markings as he looked into the dense fog behind the door. Beside him, White Fox's body had already gone weak and collapsed onto the floor with her belly on the floor. With difficulty, she moved her body slowly back to the direction where they had come from. Qin picked the limp White Fox up. "Don't grab me. My heart is beating very fast. I'm going to die." "You're not going to die. The things in this dragon palace are, however, dead." Qin laughed. "Guess what I saw?" Hu didn't reply and waved her limbs in the air. Her tail also wagged left and right, seemingly trying to crawl away, unwilling to stay here for even a moment. Qin laughed. "I saw the surging river dragon king." "Oh!" The little white fox gasped and fainted, her limbs turning straight and stiff. Qin waited for a moment, and the little white fox secretly opened one of her eyes to look around. Qin teased her again, "Surging river dragon king." Hu's limbs became even stiffer and closed her eyes again. "The surging river dragon king is dead." Qin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There's only its bones left. Who knows how long the Dragon King had been dead for? I managed to see his dragon bones in the fog. Hu immediately opened out her eyes. "It's dead." Qin nodded his head. "You can finally be at ease this time. Follow me in." Hu immediately shook her head, and Qin could only helplessly put her down. However, seeing the white fox continued to weakly crawl outside with her tummy on the floor, Qinmu picked her up again and placed her on his shoulder. Walking towards the door, the white fox was extremely nervous. With her furs all standing on ends, her claws gripped tightly onto Qinmu's shoulder, and her terror-filled eyes stared widely at the front, not daring to move even an inch. As Qinmu walked into the fog, Hu Linger gripped even tighter, and her furry tail became extremely stiff. After so many years, the dense fog didn't dissipate at all. However, what's weird was that Qinmu couldn't feel any humidity walking in the fog. He could only see droplets of water floating in the fog, quiet and unmoving. He then saw numerous broken jades floating in the sky, and other than that, there were also pieces of spirit weapons, broken bones, all silently floating around, as if there were not an ounce of weight. When he was in the doorway, he only saw the dragon bones and didn't see the rest of these kinds of stuff. There must be a bitter battle here. Even the skeletons and spirit weapons of experts were shattered. What exactly happened here? Did it happen before the Great Ruins catastrophe or after? Qinmu suddenly felt a sharp pain on his scalp. It was Hu Linger who had been scared to death by a floating skull and had jumped onto his head while gripping his scalp tightly, her body arching from fright. The white fox trembled in fear, making Qinmu's scalp trembling as well. Dragon! White fox screamed and swooped down from Qinmu's head, clinging to his back. With her limbs latched onto Qinmu's waist, Qinmu looked like he was carrying a white fur backpack. Chapter 47. The Third Person. In front of them, a huge dragon circled round and round the majestic palace, with its huge dragon head lying high on top of the great hall, looking straight at them. This was a dragon skeleton. The flesh of the huge dragon was gone and only the skeleton was left. Just the teeth alone was much taller than Qinmu. Even though the huge dragon had died, its might and extraordinary points were still visible. It must have been an extremely powerful being in its lifetime. Qinmu opened his heaven's eyes to take a look, and he instantly felt as if the dragon's skeleton had come to life. With its divine glow piercing the heavens, the huge dragon seemed to be snaking around in his eyes. The huge dragon was clearly dead, yet its demeanor and metal made him feel that the huge dragon was still alive. Surging River Dragon King, a true dragon. Qinmu looked at the huge dragon and his heart wavered. He thought of the fist skill old Ma had taught him, the Tempest of the 9 Dragons of Thunderclap 8 Strikes. The vital chi of Tempest of the 9 Dragons was split into 9 layers of force. The first layer was Rush of the Raging Dragon, the second layer was Twin Dragon Twist. With every layer of strength, an extra dragon force would appear. Training his fists since young with old Ma, he had practiced this move countless of times, yet he was always unable to grasp the essence of this skill. With his recent boost in cultivation, he then managed to raise the power of Tempest of the 9 Dragons. However, when he had fought with Ming Xian, he was still at a disadvantage. This could be partly due to him not cultivating the realized Mahayana scripture from the Great Thunderclap Monastery, but it was still mostly due to the fact that his 9 dragon force in his fists only looked like dragons. Looking like a dragon doesn't mean it's a dragon. The appearance may be there, but the might isn't, therefore it would naturally shatter with a touch. If the force in his fist was real dragons, even if he didn't learn realized Mahayana scripture, his Tempest of the 9 Dragons would also be the true teaching. This was because Tempest of the 9 Dragons had also imitated the impetus of real dragons controlling the Tempest. Amidst the great Tempest, the divine dragon slaughtered its enemies. If he could manage to grab this essence, there would be no need for him to learn realized Mahayana scripture. Tempest of the 9 Dragons, Tempest of the 9 Dragons. Studying the dragon skeleton, Qinmu subconsciously walked forward. In his eyes, there was only the dragon's skeleton as he studied the shape of the dragon, the structure of the bones, the dragon's might, the dragon's grace, and comprehending the dragon's aura and spirit. He sank deeper and deeper into a trance the more he studied the dragon. As he moved forward, he started making strange movements with his arms and his body, subconsciously imitating actions of a real dragon. This vital chi also unknowingly swam throughout his body like a real dragon, perfecting the bits and pieces with every circulation. In his spirit embryo divine treasure, his spirit embryo also imitated his movement as it inhaled and exhaled the vital qi. Something magical happened. The vital qi it exhaled out didn't enter Qinmu's body and had instead swum around the spirit embryo's body, transforming into a small dragon. As the vital qi exhaled out increased, the little dragon gradually grew and became as tall as a human while coiling around the spirit embryo. Hulinger was originally frightened, but as time went on, the fear in her heart diminished and she wasn't as frightened anymore. However, as Qinmu studied the dragon's skeleton, he had totally forgotten about her as well. After some time, Hulinger's tummy started to growl and carefully climbed down from Qinmu's back. She tiptoed her way back out of the underwater dragon palace, not because she was scared of disturbing Qinmu, but because she was scared she would alarm the dragon skeleton if she was too loud. After an hour, the white fox came back from outside holding onto a sack. In the sack, there were all the strange creatures like the dandelion. Hulinger resisted the fear of the dragon in her heart and walked into the fog, back to where Qinmu was. She climbed back onto Qinmu's back and sat on his shoulder, stuffing the creatures into his mouth. As if he wasn't feeling anything, Qinmu just ate whatever that entered his mouth. Hulinger fed him over 20 of those strange creatures before starting to eat them happily herself. Qinmu still had no signs of waking up as he continued to move forward freely with his eyes glued to the dragon's skeleton. Sometimes he even climbed up the dragon's skeleton and walked around on the huge bones. Meanwhile, a green dragon coiled around his spirit embryo while letting out electrical sparks. However, Qinmu was too focused on studying the dragon's skeleton and didn't notice. 2 days passed by like this. Qinmu had eaten, drank, peed, pooped, and slept here, and he had already become stinky, yet he still had no signs of waking up. Hulinger was also very patient and had taken care of Qinmu all these while. When he was thirsty, she would use tree leaf to scoop water for him. When he was hungry, she would go and catch some of the strange creatures. However, to catch them, she would have to pass by the pool and be careful not to get eaten by the weird fish. Luckily for her, she was pretty smart and had not slipped up. And of course, when Qinmu was discharging his bowels, she would still move away. When the third day came, Hulinger was fetching some water when she suddenly heard Qinmu's astonished voice. "Why am I so dirty?" Hulinger was startled and surprised as she replied him bluntly, "It would be weird if you aren't dirty after standing here for 3 days." "It's been 3 days?" Qinmu was startled and cried out, "This is bad. The people in the village would definitely be worried sick for me not returning after 3 days. Quick, let's return." Suddenly, he stopped his footsteps and said, "If I go back now, I would definitely be scolded and even barred from coming out again. Since I'm already out now, why don't I take a look around in the Dragon Palace and see what treasures I can find?" In high spirits, he walked into the underwater Dragon Palace. Hulinger followed him into the majestic hall. However, with her tiny guts, she only dared to stay around Qinmu's legs and didn't wander around on her own. The great hall was also shrouded in the fog, which was even denser than outside, thus he couldn't see far ahead. Weird, where did this fog come from? Qinmu was bewildered. This fog isn't mist, and even with his heaven's eyes, he couldn't really see far ahead. The deeper he entered the hall, the denser the fog became and the lesser he could see. Hulinger became even more afraid and bit on Qinmu's pants to follow him. At this moment, he heard a strange voice, which was gentle, serene, yet giving off a sorrowful feeling. It was as if someone was singing a sorrowful song in the fog, yet it was intelligible. It was an ancient language which was mysterious and cryptic. It was as ancient as the god and devil language. As Qinmu listened to the song, he touched his face and realized he had been tearing unknowingly. This song made him feel as if there was a woman floating around in the fog while singing out her heartbroken story. Suddenly, the rings on the Kakra monk's staff started to ring loudly. Grandpa Ma said that the Kakra monk's staff had the effect of eliminating impure and wicked thoughts. When the heart wavers, the rings will ring. Every impure and wicked thought will make the rings jingle once. Now that the rings are jingling nonstop, are my impure and wicked thoughts that much? Looking downwards, Qinmu didn't know whether to cry or laugh. It turned out Hu Linger was shaking all over while grabbing tightly on his leg. Her tail was, however, on the Kakara staff. It wasn't Qinmu's heart that was in disorder, it was the little fox's. "Linger, move your tail away," Qinmu said. Hu Linger moved her tail away and continued to shiver. Qinmu frowned. After Hu Linger moved her tail away, the Kakara monk's staff was still ringing away loudly. Could there be a third person besides me and Hu Linger? Could the wicked thoughts be from the third person? Could it be the singing woman? The Kakara monk's staff rang more and more violently. It was clear there was a third person here with too much impure and wicked thoughts. By sensing the thoughts, would the Kakara staff ring non-stop? In the air, the song floated here and there, becoming more and more sorrowful. Qinmu looked downwards and felt a chill. In the fog, he could see a bony hand reaching for the Kakara monk's staff, and before the hand could touch it, the hand silently retracted back as if it was electrocuted. Qinmu propped up the Kakara staff and looked around, the corners of his eyes twitching from what he saw. In the fog, bony palms started to come towards him in all directions and only retracted back when they met the Kakara monk's staff. The gentle song in the fog also started to become clearer as if it was beside his ears. What exactly is in the fog? His scalp turned numbed and Hu Linger had already climbed into his pants and onto his back and finally settled around his waist in his shirt. Only her furry head was out as she sneakily checked out her surrounding while shivering. This sight was simply too scary, making Qinmu flustered as well. However, as the golden rings jingled, it had a calming effect and settled his heart down. He composed himself. With this amount of hands, they are definitely not from the same person. No matter what it is, all shall retreat. Qinmu's vital qi jolted and surged into the Kakara staff. Raising the monk's staff and giving a heavy slam, a loud clang rang out while the Kakara staff shone in all directions. At the same time, an image of Buddha appeared behind his back while sitting cross-legged on the air, erupting in Sanskrit. "So I have heard." The Sanskrit voice from the Buddha's image vibrated out, since time without beginning. All beings have been undergoing death and rebirth over and over simply because they have not been aware of the pure understanding which is the essential nature of the everlasting true mind. Instead, the workings of their minds are distorted, and because the workings of their minds are distorted, they are bound to the cycle. Chapter 48. Dragon's Soul. Behind Qinmu, there was a circling wheel of light behind the Buddha's head shining brightly in all directions. Even the peculiar fog was cleared away by the Buddha's aura. Hearing a continuous clattering, Qinmu took a look around and saw dried corpses dropping down one by one in midair, filling up the entire floor. Other than the dry corpses, there were also skeletons with flesh missing, leaving behind only bones. However, the bones were adorned with baggy clothing that looked like palace outfits. The fog around him had vanished, instantly clearing up his vision. However, the song was still ongoing but had sounded further away from him now. The song was still melodious and filled with pitiless sorrow. Qinmu dispersed his vital qi and the image of Buddha behind him disappeared. Why are there so many bodies hidden in the Great Hall? These bodies don't look like ordinary people. Qinmu sized up the corpses and slightly frowned. There were too many corpses here, and it was abnormal that they weren't decomposing. The surging river Dragon King's body outside had already rotted away, leaving behind the skeleton. How is it that the corpses in the hall could be preserved until now? There's a possibility that these bodies had come in after the Great Ruins catastrophe. They had found the path leading to Surging River Dragon Palace and entered this great hall, just like Hu Linger and me. The corners of Qinmu's eyes twitched and looked forward. The deeper part of the great hall was still covered in dense fog. What lies in the fog that had killed them and turned them into the state? His scalp turned numb as he gripped his monk's staff tightly. The Kakara monk's staff was no doubt a treasure that was worth an entire city. He had only fed his vital qi into the monk's staff, and such an astonishing power came forth. It was Granny C's wish for him to bring the monk's staff out. Granny C was very mindful of his safety, and other than the monk's staff, she had also transformed into different forms to protect him in the dark. Granny must have been worried sick for these few days. Qinmu felt guilty, but his spirits lifted up once again as he looked around. The source of this fog, as well as the great danger, should be around this great hall. What was the thing that had killed these practitioners that had come exploring? At this moment, the fog deep in the hall surged forward to him and spread under his legs before rising up slowly. When the dry corpses on the floor were covered by the fog, they actually slowly moved their bodies and stood up peculiarly. The fog rose higher and soon rose above Qinmu's head. In the fog, the corpses started to float upwards. As the fog grew denser, the dry corpses vanished in the fog. Who's the ghost inciting trouble and mystifying me? Kakura. Qinmu carried the monk's staff and walked forward. After dozens of yards forward, the song felt closer and Qinmu raised his monk's staff to give a heavy slam. The Buddha's aura shone brightly and the Buddha's voice surrounded him. Behind his back appeared the image of Buddha once again, and the Buddha's aura shone gloriously, vanquishing the fog and causing the dry corpses to fall to the ground once more. Little monk. A bone-chilling voice suddenly resonated out in the hall. However, it only said one phrase, making Qinmu and Little Fox suspected that they had heard wrongly. Qinmu finally saw the source of the fog, which was coming out from an ice sculpture in the Dragon Palace. He finally walked up and saw a young dragon lying inside silently. There was a broken sword stabbed into its chest, piercing its heart. Between the dragon pillars in the Great Hall, there was a huge green dragon slowly swimming to and fro. It didn't seem to have a physical body as it passed through the dragon pillars. The song was coming from the green dragon, and its gaze had never left the body of the young dragon that was frozen. Its gaze was filled with tender affection and sorrow, just like its song, seemingly heartbroken about its child having left it. This was a dragon's soul. The soul of a dragon. It could be the Surging River Dragon King, or it could be the Surging River Dragon King's wife. It was a mother, and the frozen young dragon should be her child. She must have encountered the Great Ruins catastrophe while her child suffered a sure death sword wound. She must have loved her child too much, thus having frozen her child up as she died from the catastrophe. However, her soul still lingered around in this great hall, guarding her precious child while singing the nursery rhymes of the dragon race, hoping to wake her child up one day. Little monk, over here. Suddenly, the voice resonated out again and Qinmu looked towards the source of it. Other than this mysterious ice block, Qinmu saw another mysterious ice block in the hall. This mysterious ice block was hidden behind the ice block that had sealed the young dragon, both blocks being linked together. In this ice block, a white eyebrow elder in purple clothes was sealed inside. The clothing on the elder should be an official robe, which was a twilight robe that was embroidered with 9 ornaments. On the waist hanged gold and jade pendants as well as a sword. On his head was a 9-tasseled imperial crown while he had a plucking pose. With a black banner in one hand, his other hand was deep into the other block of mysterious ice and grabbing onto a green egg-sized bead. He didn't know what was the green bead, but the green bead had a small green dragon coiled inside. Was it this bead that had frozen the old man? Qinmu blinked his eyes and walked forward to closely inspect the elder frozen in the ice, and then found the oddity. As his body moved, the eyes of the elder in the ice were actually moving as well. The voice really was his. Qinmu was slightly frightened and turned his head to look at the dry corpses on the ground, instantly thinking of a possibility. The elder in the ice should be the first person who had found Surging River Dragon Palace. When he found this bead in the ice and wanted to take away the bead, he was frozen in place. To be able to survive in the ice for such a long time and not die was probably due to the black banner in his hand, which had killed the practitioners that had entered the Dragon Palace after him and absorbed the essence and blood of them. Therefore, the practitioners had turned into dry corpses after their deaths. Being sealed in the ice block until now, the amount of cultivation the elder could use shouldn't be much. In addition, by bringing the Kakura monk staff into the Dragon Palace, Qinmu was able to survive from the peculiar powers of the Black Banner and escaped unharmed under the protection of the staff. So it was the Kakura of the old monk from Great Thunderclap Monastery. No wonder you were able to defend against the fog's peculiar power. The elder in the ice was unable to open his mouth, but he was able to project his voice out by his throat vibration. You aren't a monk of Great Thunderclap Monastery, so why do you have the old monk staff? Qin honestly answered him. Junior here had defeated his disciple and won it. Won it? The elder gave a laugh from his throat. How would the old monk not be a sore loser? How old are you? Qin replied, I would be 12 this autumn. The purple-clothed elder praised, 12 years old, and you defeated the disciple of that old monk. Truly outstanding. Qin blinked his eyes innocently and asked, why is Senior trapped here inside the ice? The elder chuckled and said, there's naturally a story behind this, and it goes all the back to the beginning when, hey, don't leave. Come back. Qin stopped and said as if he was in a dilemma, Senior, I'm in a rush to go home and have no time for stories. The elder coughed and continued, long story short, I had brought my various disciples to travel the great ruins and had stumbled upon this place by accident. Seeing the numerous dry corpses here, I knew it was this dragon bead causing mischief and having killed everyone that had entered here by absorbing their essence and blood, turning them into dry corpses. The reason for the bead doing this was to extend the lifespan of this young dragon. As a cultivator, I shall not condone this kind of behavior and was prepared to restrain this dragon bead in order to stop it from harming more people. However, I had made a mistake by not expecting this dragon bead to be the dragon bead of the dragon god, thus getting sealed here in the ice. None of my disciples were spared. Their essence and blood got absorbed by this dragon bead to extend the life of the young dragon. Hu Linger, who was hiding in Qin chest and peeked her head out, whispering, do you believe his story, young master? Qin hesitated. His guess was the direct opposite of what the elder had said. The elder's story was that the mother dragon had used the dragon bead to harm people by absorbing their essence and blood to save her child by extending its life. Furthermore, the elder was the righteous one which got schemed by the dragon bead. Whereas Qin guess was that the elder was sealed by the ice and to extend his own life, he had used evil arts to absorb the essence and blood of the practitioners here. Qin couldn't deny that both his guess and the elder's story could be true, but which was the true scenario? Qin looked around and saw the fog swarming towards him again, and he immediately slammed the Kakra monk's staff on the ground. So I have heard. The image of Buddha appeared behind him again as his Sanskrit voice resonated out, since time without beginning. All beings have been undergoing death and rebirth over and over simply because they have not been aware of the pure understanding which is the essential nature of the everlasting true mind. Instead, the workings of their minds are distorted, and because the workings of their minds are distorted, they are bound to the cycle. The Buddhism of Great Thunderclap Monastery sure is skillful. The elder in the ice admired. How may I address Senior? Qin dispelled the fog and asked. The elder in the ice replied, my name is Gu Linwan, tutor to the Crown Prince of Eternal Peace Empire and a lower first-ranking official. If you can rescue me out of here, I can promise you endless wealth when we are back to Eternal Peace Empire. Chapter 49. An Elixir Heart. Qin pondered over it. Li River Sect Master, Mu Beifeng was a lower second-ranking official while this Gu Linwan was a lower first-ranking official, so he definitely must be more powerful. What this senior said is true. He told Hu Linger. Hu Linger was puzzled. How do you know what he said is true? The fog is produced by the dragon's soul. Qin pointed at the soul of the mother dragon swimming around. Wherever the soul of the dragon passed by, the fog would grow thicker, and the dry corpses would stand up once again and float towards Qin as if they could smell him. This kind of fog could make these dry corpses enter a not dead nor alive state. It's a method used to protect her son and also to protect this great hall. Qin analyzed. Hu Linger had also noticed this point. Once the fog that the dragon's soul had spat out was dispelled, the dry corpses would stop moving and drop back to the ground. When the fog shrouded the bodies once again, the dry corpses would come alive again and try to attack anyone that was near. The dry corpses were like the guardians of this great hall to prevent people from stealing the dragon bead and disturbing the healing of the young dragon. And the source of these dry corpses would probably be like what the elder had said and was the doings of the dragon bead, absorbing every last drop of blood and essence from the practitioners that had trespassed into the dragon palace to extend the life of the young dragon. Jinmu was troubled, Senior Gu. Even though I may have the heart to help you, but with Junior's measly powers, I'm afraid there's no way I can do so. Gu Liwan chuckled. Of course you don't have the power to dissolve the mysterious ice of the dragon bead. However, I do. As long as you listen to my command, you can set me free. When I'm free, you can get whatever you want. His voice carried a hint of arrogance, which showed that the tutor of the crown prince was in extremely high position. I may have been trapped in this mysterious ice, but my cultivation is still here, thus it still can't freeze me to death yet. Gu Liwan continued, I shall use the last of my cultivation to move my sword out of the ice. With the sword, you shall slay the soul of the mother dragon. Once the soul is slain, the dragon bead will no longer be able to trap me. When I'm free, I can even reward you with this dragon bead. Jinmu jumped in shock and cried out, Slay the soul of the mother dragon? Senior, Junior has just cultivated to the spirit embryo realm and is a puny practitioner. How am I able to slay the soul of the mother dragon? Gu Liwan laughed coldly. You naturally can't, but with my sword, you can. My sword is not an ordinary weapon, nor is it that junk that you are carrying on your back. This sword is a first-ranking sword from the Imperial family. It was forged by the best treasures and blacksmiths that the Eternal Peace Empire had gathered. There are a total of 16 first-ranking officials, and so there are a total of 16 such swords. Each of the swords has their own name, and my sword is called Junior Protector Sword. Jinmu hesitated. How's the sword compared to the monk's staff in my hand? Gu Liwan sneered. The old monk's Kakura monk staff is indeed decent, and the Great Thunderclap Monastery is also one of the huge well-known sects that are scarce in this world. However, how can a treasure forged by the power of a sect be compared to a treasure forged by the power of an empire? In the Eternal Peace Empire, there are even 2 to 3 huge sects like the Great Thunderclap Monastery. Jinmu's heart shook. He was also slightly puzzled and asked, Since Senior has this kind of treasure, why didn't you slay the mother dragon's soul? Gu Liwan was speechless and finally said after a while, Originally, I didn't think of the crucial point and only thought about eliminating the hidden danger of the dragon bead for our future generations. However, in my carelessness, I had fallen into this trap, and before I discovered, I couldn't break free from the ice. It was too late. After being sealed, I could only cling to my vital chi to prevent myself from being freezed to death by the mysterious ice. Even if I want to control my sword, I can't do it in my weakened state anymore. Do you know how long I have been sealed here? Gu Liwan sighed, an entire 200 years. For 200 years, I have been sealed here. It was exceptionally difficult for me to extend my life until now. Jinmu sympathized with his plight and said, Being sealed in ice for 200 years, I'd have gone crazy if it was me. It's pretty outstanding for Senior to hold out until now. Gu Liwan sighed again. Luckily you have come. I shall use my remaining vital chi to send my Junior Protector Sword out of the mysterious ice. Slay the soul of the mother dragon for me and free me. Jinmu nodded his head and respectfully said, Junior will do my best. Gu Liwan gathered his remaining vital chi and the sword at his waist started to move. However, it was very slow. After 2 hours, the hilt of the sword was barely revealed. After quite some time, the entire hilt of the sword was revealed. However, the sword's sheath was still frozen by the mysterious ice. Gu Liwan seemed tired and his voice croaked, My vital chi is almost depleted. Quickly slay the mother dragon. Jinmu acknowledged, and his vital chi thread, which was as thick as an arm, flew out and swept up the sword's hilt. With a scraping sound, the Junior Protector Sword was out from its sheath and instantly shone brightly. Jinmu and Hu Linger's eyes felt pain as if the sword light had injured their eyes. Only after some time did their eyes recover and be able to see clearly again. What are you doing? Gu Liwan didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw Jinmu's extremely thick vital chi thread sweeping up his Junior Protector Sword to chase after the mother dragon, yet was unable to land a hit. What are you doing? Who manipulates sword like you do? Who taught you your sword control techniques? Who taught you sword skills? Jinmu stopped and replied truthfully, I don't know sword control technique nor do I know any sword skills. Gu Liwan almost died from anger and his head started to ache. He then asked angrily, Why do you carry around a sword pouch if you don't know sword technique or sword skills? Qinmu replied embarrassedly, "This sword pouch is very heavy, so I carry it around as a type of training." Gu Liwan almost puked out blood. This kind of crude sword skill made him want to jump out of the mysterious ice more than anything. "Alright, I shall impart to you sword control techniques by using qi to manipulate sword and sword skills." He suppressed his anger and continued, "Once you have learned them, you'll be able to slay the mother dragon." Qinmu shook his head, "I'm not learning." Gu Liwan flew into a rage. If he wasn't sealed by the mysterious ice, he would have jumped out and beaten this rascal to a pulp. Granny said that there would be someone to teach me better sword skills, and if I learned someone else's sword skills, the person wouldn't teach me anymore. Gu Liwan calmed himself down and laughed loudly. "Better sword skills? Do you know that the best sword skills in the world are the Eternal Peace Empire's sword skills?" Imperial Preceptor had brought together all sword skills in the world and summoned all the Grandmasters of sword skills in the world to found the Eternal Peace Empire sword skills. Isn't it the best sword skill if it's founded on the wisdom of all the Grandmasters of sword skill? Won't it surpass the sword skills founded by the patriarchs of those so-called sword sects? These so-called sword sects mainly just follow the footsteps of their ancestors and remain stuck in the old ways, thinking that they are invincible, not knowing they were already left far behind. Qinmu stared blankly. He felt Gu Linwan's words were very logical and he had no way to deny it. Because of the incident with the Li River sect, he didn't have any favorable impression of the Imperial Preceptor, but he was still impressed with the Imperial Preceptor's magnanimity. To have such magnanimity to ignore the sectarian bias and difference between the sects, allowing the Grandmasters of sword skills throughout the world to put their minds together to create a new sword skill entirely. It's hard not to be impressed by this kind person. Not learning. Qinmu shook his head. Gu Liwan had the urge to break the ice himself and ruthlessly whack Qinmu's ass. After all that he had said, he really deserved a beating for not wanting to learn. After a while, Gu Linwan suddenly smiled. "All right, I shan't teach you sword skills. I shall teach you sword control techniques." Sword control techniques aren't sword skills, so it won't interfere with you learning the other person's sword skills. Qinmu's heart wavered, and he nodded reluctantly. "It seems like you aren't a completely stubborn mule and know what's good for you." This sword control technique is called Secrets of Elixir Heart. It teaches you how to control a sword and doesn't teach you sword skills. Gu Linwan's spirit vibrated and said, "What is Elixir Heart?" Elixir is pure, a flawless jade, a 9-transformation spirit pill, a flawless and exquisite heart so pure without any impurity. This sword control technique requires a pure and innocent heart to control the sword. When your heart is there, your sword would be there, and it would be disadvantageous to not follow the directions. The incompetence of sword control techniques in this world stems from sticking to the old tradition. The first step to cultivate an elixir heart is fire, furnace in Dantian, using the heart fire to cultivate true vitality. With the furnace as a field and the fire as seeds, daring the sun god for 10 suns to rise, using the sacred fire of the blazing suns to burn gloriously. Qinmu immediately put his mind down to memorize. The sword control technique of the Secrets of Elixir Heart was profound and righteous, even when there was a mnemonic chant. If there was no one to explain the profound meaning of it, he wouldn't have known how to cultivate. Gu Liwan repeated the entire Secrets of Elixir Heart once more and explained the profound of cultivation word by word. As he listened, Qinmu's heart was jumping up and down like a spirit monkey, tweaking its ears and scratching its cheeks. After some time, Gu Liwan finished explaining the Secrets of Elixir Heart once more. Go cultivate first before controlling the sword. If you are slow, it would take 10 days, and 2 if you are fast before you can use Qi to manipulate the Junior Protector Sword to slay the soul of the Mother Dragon. The little fox on your chest has also benefited with you and had the chance to learn the best sword control technique in the world. Chapter 50, Little Fox Demon. Qinmu was filled with gratitude as clasped his hands and bowed to the ground. Thank you, Senior, for your teaching. Junior will engrave them in my memory. Gu Linwan smiled. If you know gratitude, then quickly cultivate and slay the soul of the Mother Dragon. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Qinmu immediately executed Secrets of Elixir Heart. Secrets of Elixir Heart requires one to see their Dantian as a piece of field. to plow the Dantian and plant sources of fire. When the 10 suns rise in the sky above the Dantian, they would nourish the sources of fire and strengthen them, turning the Dantian into a furnace that's blazing with raging sacred fire. Once it attained a minor success, could one be considered to master the basic of Elixir Heart. When the Elixir Heart attained minor success, one's sword would follow one's thoughts when they control sword, allowing the heart and sword to be as one. It was easy to say, but difficult to accomplish. To nourish the sources of fire into the sacred fire wasn't that easy, and to cultivate Elixir Heart was even more difficult. Therefore, Elixir Heart was split into 9 transformations. As long Qinmu can cultivate the first transformation, his skill in using qi to manipulate sword would surpass his previous ability and, no doubt, catch up with the soul of the Mother Dragon. Your foundation is very solid. Gu Liwan was astonished. In just a short time, Qinmu had already plowed his Dantian and planted his sources of fire. The 10 suns had also risen together and started nurturing the sources of fire. This showed that Qinmu's cultivation was rather dense. If it was any other ordinary practitioners, they would probably have difficulty in planting the sources of fire, much less making the 10 suns rise. Only by consuming spirit pills and miraculous medicine continuously could one sustain their vital qi to plant enough sources of fire. Qinmu didn't even need to consume spirit pill and miraculous medicine and was able to fill his entire Dantian with sources of fire in one shot. In addition, he still had plenty of vital qi left to turn them into 10 suns shining down onto his Dantian. It was extremely rare for people to have this kind of cultivation in the spirit embryo realm. With his horrifying cultivation speed, he won't need 10 days or 2 days. Just 1 day, and he would be able to attain the first transformation of the secrets of Elixir Heart, slaying the dragon and freeing me out of here. Gu Linwan's gaze wavered. Such an outstanding young genius. I don't really want to kill him just like this. He gave a regretful sigh in his heart. However, the Great Ruins is the land gods abandoned. Even the bugs here are guilty, much less the humans, and they all have to die. Besides, I'm also hungry. I haven't had anything to eat in the past 50 years. The time Qinmu took to attain the first transformation was shorter than Gu Linwan had expected. It had already passed midnight, and the sky outside gradually grew brighter as sunshine penetrated through the surging river's water and shined on the underwater dragon palace. Qinmu stood up, and a thought flashed through his mind. Suddenly, his vital qi, which was coiled around the junior protector sword, pierced through the dense fog with a swoosh, flying to and fro as swift as lightning. Shii, shii. The piercing sounds of Junior Protector Sword sounded out as Qinmu instantly controlled the sword to stab 100 times repeatedly, dazzling one's eyes. Even though he didn't know sword skills, just a simple stab from him was already much scarier than Qian Qiu, the disciple from Li River Sect, which was known as Sword Sect. Secrets of Elixir Heart was indeed extraordinary. Qinmu once again expressed his thanks by bowing to Gu Linwan sincerely. Thank you, Senior, for imparting your skills. Junior will remember Senior for as long as I live. Gu Linwan laughed heartily. You are also extremely talented to be able to thoroughly comprehend and cultivate the first transformation of Elixir Heart in such a short time. However, the little fox at your side isn't as fast as you. Quickly now, manipulate the sword and slay the mother dragon. Gu Linwan was beyond elated. With his freedom in sight, even great experts like him can't help swaying their minds by worrying about their personal gains and losses. This kid had such high talent and had also saved me. I somewhat can't bear to kill him. At this moment, Qinmu turned around and left, bringing the Junior Protector Sword out of the Dragon Palace as his body vanished in the thick fog. Gu Linwan stared blankly and didn't come to terms with what had just happened. Qinmu had already brought the Junior Protector Sword and Hu Linger out of the Dragon Palace without even hesitating a step. You better come back. Gu Linwan roared in rage. You broke your promise, rascal. I had imparted my techniques and gave my sword to you. Why don't you slay the mother dragon? Outside the palace, Qinmu's voice sounded further and further away. Senior, the mother dragon had indeed used the dragon bead to kill numerous practitioners that had entered this place. However, the dragon bead would only turn them into dry walking corpses. But in the Dragon Palace, there are many corpses that didn't die at the hands of the dragon bead, as they had not turned into dry corpses and had become skeletons instead. Gu Limon was startled. When did you discover that rascal? I had discovered it the moment I entered the Dragon Palace. Gu Limon gritted his teeth and retorted coldly, Are you really only 12? A 12-year-old boy could notice all these things? To understand what had actually happened? To also beat me at my own game without batting an eyelid. Junior is only 12 years old this coming autumn. I'm only 11 now. Qin Mu's voice became softer and softer before vanished completely. Vulgarities started to spew out loudly from the Dragon Palace, landing in the ears of Qin Mu and Hu Linger. Hu Linger peeked her head out from his chest and asked puzzledly, Young Master Mu, how did you know he had evil intentions? Qin Mu explained, When we had just arrived, did you notice the numerous skeletons other than the dry corpses that had fallen out from midair when I used the monk's staff to force back the fog? Hu Linger nodded her head. She had noticed the dried-up skeletons wearing official robes being crushed by the dry corpses landing on them. The skeletons' clothing were official robes. Qin Mu continued, Gu Linwan had said that he had brought numerous disciples into the Great Ruins for training and discovered this underwater dragon palace. His disciples should have been killed by the dragon bead, but if that's the case, the essence and blood in their body would have been sucked out instead, turning them into dry corpses and not skeletons. If they weren't killed by the dragon bead, then how did they die? Hu Linger suddenly came to realization and immediately replied, Gun Linwan had a very peculiar black banner in his other hand. During the process of getting sealed, he must have used the black banner to kill his disciples. When he was sealed in the mysterious ice by the dragon bead and was unable to escape, he knew he would be stuck here for a long time. Conflicts happened over and over again among the officialdom. Even though they were his disciples, they were all officials of Eternal Peace Empire and had no master and disciple relationship. These people might not even inform the imperial family to come rescue him. After all, an empty seat that belonged to the tutor of Crown Prince was always beneficial to everyone. Qin Mu nodded his head. Since the imperial family might not rescue him, he could either give up or go through to the end by absorbing all the essence and blood of his disciples to prevent himself from dying from hunger after being sealed for too long. However, his method was different from the dragon bead of the mother dragon. It was more peculiar and had absorbed the flesh of his disciples as well, turning them into skeletons. Did you remember when we just entered the Dragon Palace and my monk staff had kept ringing? Hu Linger remembered the time when she was prone on Qin Mu's pants and was shivering tremendously. Qin Mu had even asked her to move her tail away. I had thought it was the thoughts of the dry corpses that had affected the Kakra monk staff, thus causing it to jingle nonstop. However, dry corpses don't have conscience, so I thought it was the impure thoughts of the mother dragon soul. What was weird was when I reached Gu Linwan's side, the monk's staff stopped ringing, so it would definitely not be the impure thoughts of the mother dragon souls and was Gu Linwan's instead. Qin Mu continued, the reason why the monk's staff stopped ringing was because Gu Linwan had no more impure thoughts. Since we have the Kakra monk staff protecting us, he won't be able to eat us, so he would just have to use us to set him free. Hu Linger was flabbergasted. Only after some time did the little fox stammered out, Why, young master? Are you really only 12 years old? I'm only 12 after autumn. Qin Mu gave an honest smile. You must be a fox demon too, right? Hu Linger became excited. You must be a male fox that had turned intelligent. The kind that's extremely clever. Qin Mu began to grumble. You had no idea how I had spent my childhood. Since young I have been swindled by a bunch of old men and old lady, even before I had come out for hunting. Granny had tricked me to grab an egg from the chicken coop. There was a hen dragon inside which I had no chance of winning. After getting chased and beaten by the hen dragon wherever I ran, Granny took the chance to sneak over and grabbed the egg. After a while, they safely passed through the pool and walked out of the Dragon King's temple. Hu Ling erased the demon wind with her spell, and Qin Mu traveled on the wind as they returned to the straw hut in front of the waterfall. Qin Mu was in a rush to return to the village, so he bid goodbye to Hu Linger, who smiled. Why are you in a rush back when you are so dirty and smelly now? There's a pool beside my waterfall where you can take a shower first. I shall wash your clothes and let them dry. Won't it be better if you're wearing clean clothes? Furthermore, there are still some doubts about cultivation I have to consult you on. Qinmu hesitated for a moment and wanted to reply her. However, Granny C cold laughter sounded from inside the straw hut. Shower? Cultivation? Is it to pluck yin to nourish yang or pluck yang to nourish yin? Granny, Qinmu was astonished and surprised. Why are you here?